I brought along my baby. I thought you might need somebody with a horn.
Not tonight, Joey. The last time you played trumpet for me, you loused it up. I had to share you with a bottle.
A bottle? Me? I forgot what the stuff tastes like. 6, 7 months. I'm way up on the wagon.
Sure, Joey, sure.
What am I, some kind of kook?
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
How are you this week, Fred?
I'm good. I feel like a whole host of calamities conspired to prevent us from recording on our normal day. It was like a child's sleeping habit, a lunar eclipse, a flooded basement, but finally...
Yes.
We're here to talk about the Twilight Zone. I'm doing well. One quick little Twilight Zone related thing I wanted to get out of the way. A friend of mine who probably doesn't listen to the show, so I won't say friend of the Pwn.
Yeah, there's a clear divide in my world, I found.
Yes, exactly. He does know about the show, and he said, my friend who's like a tattoo artist is really into the Twilight Zone, and he like has a lot of like pre-made Twilight Zone tattoos, and he like sent me over like a picture of the guy's tattoos that he's got ready for Twilight Zone fans.
Oh, so you're thinking maybe for our big 150 spectacular.
Yeah, exactly. We can both get tattoos live on air. No, but I was blown away because the first one was of like a nurse from Eye of the Beholder.
Sure.
The second,
classic.
Right, classic, of course. Everyone who hasn't. It's like Asian characters on your lower back.
Totally.
The second one was a school bell along with some text saying, "Don't cry, weird beard," which is a reference to...
changing of the guard.
Exactly. I was like,
Deep cut.
If anyone has that too, anyone, let me know and we'll get them on the podcast now. So I don't know, just a shout out. If anyone wants that one, write us an email. I'll point you in the right direction. But I know
like you don't get that reference unless you host a Twilight Zone podcast or have written a book on the Twilight Zone. It's hard to really get that deep into it.
He basically designed it for Martin Grams Jr. or Mark Scott Zickery. But I know from some texting we've been doing that I'm to ask you about The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Now, is that a movie, or tell me what that is?
That is a film from the early 80s, though it feels very, very 70s, that I've meant to see for many years. Frankly, I think the first time I ever heard about it was on an episode of Mystery Science Theater. I think the Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, they drop a reference to it. And I've mentioned it on the cast for two reasons. One, the theater I went to see it in Pittsburgh happened to have a Twilight Zone pinball machine in the theater, which was pretty cool.
Nice. Pretty cool.
And they had a pretty sweet Forbidden Planet poster, so...
Nice.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But the real reason is the plot of The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh is very similar to A Big Tall Wish.
Really?
The plot is essentially Dr. J, Julius Erving, is a basketball player. He's like the star player on a terrible basketball team in Pittsburgh. Huh. And he has like a ball boy, 12-year-old buddy who convinces him that the way they can get the whole team to start winning is if they have only Pisces on the team. He thinks it's all about astrology, so they like fire the rest of the team and bring in all Pisces, and they're all madcap, wacky characters, and then they start winning, and it's terrible. But but just this whole idea of like the little kid who has this magical power who helps them overcome. I mean, it never ever gets anywhere near the quality of A Big Tall Wish, but I think we'd like done The Big Tall Wish like 4 days before I went to see it. It was like, whoa,
that's interesting.
Cool. Yeah, so
I'm trying.
Fans, listeners, please do not check out The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
That was a 2-minute segment about a movie you definitely should not see. I'm just trying to think of The Big Tall Fish. Is that the pun?
Yeah, that would be it. There you go.
Good. We got it. All right.
I'm sure a lot of people have already covered that. That's well-worn territory.
Yeah, exactly. That's a cliche if there ever was one. We're not talking about The Big Tall Wish, though. We are talking about...
A Passage for Trumpet, a first season episode, the 32nd of the production run. It aired originally on May 20th, 1960.
Joey Crown, musician with an odd, intense face, whose life is a quest for impossible things, like flowers in concrete, or like trying to pluck a note of music out of the air and put it under glass to treasure. Joey Crown, musician with an odd, intense face, who in a moment will try to leave the earth and discover the middle ground. The place we call the Twilight Zone.
With that music playing in the background, that really starts to sound quite beatniky. The Serling as beatnik
totally.
caricature really takes off in that one.
What if Redford had come in and auditioned for this, and they're like, yeah, he blew it away, but he just doesn't have an odd and intense face.
Yes.
Like, he's trying so hard to not look charming and laid back, you know?
I wonder if, like, Serling ran that by Klugman before he recorded it. It's like, this odd, intense kind of cover it for you.
Yeah, he's like, I've softened it. It used to be ugly and bug-eyed. But
We like to write our own Serling-style intros. Mine's pretty straight down the middle. How about you?
for the amount of brain power exerted on it is really not good. You know,
Okay.
you've often mentioned how, like, oh, I dashed it off 5 minutes before,
Yeah.
and I think you've done some good stuff. This one, I really, like, sat at, you know, I was throwing darts at the wall and really working my thesaurus, and I came up with an idea, and it just didn't go anywhere. But
Okay. Okay. So does that mean you want to go
let's
first?
get it out.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
hear
please.
it.
From the West Coast to Dixieland, every hophead and hepcat knew the name Joey Crown. But as of late, this trumpet player's jazzy jets have cooled. While once he blew bebop or big band till the break of day, now his bossa nova is booze, be it smooth bourbon or funky shine. Dank with despair, Joey will board a bus face first and go on a strange journey, not unlike an acid trip, an avant-garde movie, or a modal fusion trad ragtime. Jazz hands, the Twilight Zone.
There are a few different concepts in there.
The concept was to work as many styles of jazz into it as possible, and it just it didn't work. Didn't stick the landing this time, folks.
All right. Here's mine.
Right.
Submitted for your record collection, veteran hornsman Joey Crown. Crown used to ply his trade at blues and jazz, but now he's occupied by booze from a glass. And you know how that tune goes. It's 1 for the money, 2 for disconnecting from friends and family, 3 for visualizing your own death. Now go, cat, go. Finally unable to take a sad song and make it better, Crown takes a swing at the old step in front of a bus blues. Will he be a one-take wonder? Or will God let him roll the tape back and try it again, this time with feeling? The answer can be found in the 2-drink minimum jazz clubs of the Twilight Zone.
I noticed you working some Beatles in there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you
Music,
can't even-
I don't know. Yeah, so, that was a winner.
Yeah, you know, this episode gave it some trouble, I guess.
Yeah, it seduces you by... It suggests an easy Serling intro, but...
Right. You might notice Serling himself, like, regurgitated half his intro twice just to kind of make it feel like a full intro.
Yeah,
I think he was only able to get a line or two out there.
There were some good ones. Like, there's something about, like notes like flowers from concrete. That had a nice feel to it.
It
but
did. I should have just ridden hard on the making fun of Klugman's face. I don't know why I tried to get fancy.
Exactly. Stick to the basics, John. Jack Klugman's looks. Comedy gold. Anyway, it's a first season episode. You can check it out on Netflix if you don't want the plot to be spoiled by what we're about to do, which is go through it with a fine-tooth comb. The plot opens on our hero, Joey Crown. He's played by Twilight Zone regular Jack Klugman. He's in an alley looking at sort of a back door leading into a jazz club, and he's seeing Polynesian shadow puppetry or a jazz concert. It's hard to tell. It's very, very conveniently done shadow. The concert ends, and the band leader comes out, and we quickly learn that Joey Crown is a trumpet player who wants a job, wants to get a shot to go back out on stage. Quick hot or not on the band leader? Jimmy Kimmel with the mustache?
Ooh, let me...
Gonna go to the
I
tape?
gotta pull up the tape. You know, I can see what you're saying, but it's not strong.
I feel like we've been trying to pin a hot or not on Jimmy Kimmel for a long time. I feel
He's elusive.
for some reason, whoever he looks like, he doesn't really want to give Jack Klugman a shot because apparently Klugman is a bit of a souse and has blown a few gigs by showing up drunk.
If you're too drunk to make it as a jazz man, you know, you're doing something really crazy.
That is true. It's kind of a good point.
I mean, come on.
You know, it's more of a performance issue, not really the fact that you're on the sauce. I don't know. Anyway,
Right, no.
Crown is insisting that he's back on the wagon. He's dry. And the band leader, you can tell sort of for sentimental reasons, is considering giving him a shot. But as they're talking it over, Joey I'm going to constantly call him Joey Crown or Jack Klugman.
Good old Jackie Crown.
Jack Crow Crown Klugman picks up his trumpet case and a whiskey bottle falls out. And the band leader, sort of taking pity on him, gives him some money. And
somewhere around here, don't they have the old "what motivates you" conversation?
You got the crummy end of the stick. Why, Joey? Why?
Because I'm sad. Because I'm nothing. And because I'll live and die in a crummy one-roomer with dirty walls and cracked pipes. And I'll never even have a girl. I'll never be anybody. Because half of me is this horn. I can't even talk to people, Baron, because this horn, that's half my language. But when I'm drunk, Baron, when I'm drunk, boy, I don't see the dirty walls or the cracked pipes. I don't know the clock's going, that the hours are going by. Because then I'm Gabriel. I'm Gabriel with a golden horn.
Yeah, I mean, having spoken to a fair number of drunk musicians in my day, I will say that's a little more eloquent than the average boozy trumpet player.
Yeah, I mean, it's a well-written...
Oh, it's very well-written. It's good.
Bit,
it's just kind of funny.
It's extraordinarily articulate.
Yeah,
exactly. Most people aren't that self-aware of their issues and still proceeding pace.
That's true, yeah. It's... It kind of goes to show you, I think, why Jack Klugman is. I mean, not only he was in a lot of episodes of the Twilight Zone, but he's pretty good in every one of them. And I feel like he has a way of making Serling dialogue seem, I don't know, the natural, but he's able to find the poetry in it, or without he's able to make it seem gritty and real in a way. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like another actor saying that line, you'd just kind of be snickering halfway through it, but he kind of buys into it and gives it an edge, I think.
That monologue has a real theatricality to it.
Yeah.
I even cut out a bit. I think there's kind of a repetition of I'm a drunk or why I drink, something like that. But he plays it very well, even though you can't quite escape the Serling dialogue, but I do think they elevate each other pretty well in that little bit.
Totally. Maybe this is more of a discussion for later, but this thought of well, why do you drink? And he's like, because I'm a loser at music. But he only became a loser at music after he got drunk. You know what I mean?
Well,
are we?
I mean, that's maybe one for Dr. Drew Pinsky or something. That's a big...
True. Next caller. All right. Moving on, Klugman's pretty low. He goes and sits down and starts riffing a little on his horn.
Yeah, I went ahead and grabbed it a little bit.
Okay.
Why not? It's not unlike a couple of nights over at the old dorm room.
True.
You and Dan picking a little tune.
Yes, exactly.
Mournful.
Totally, yeah. Some Pizza Hut we got from the door from the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, brings back poke.
All right.
Yeah. Kind of a random observation apropos of nothing, but I'm a musician sometimes, and I have a lot of friends who are kind of in the jazz world. And one thing I thought was kind of, this is maybe a little bit obvious, but choosing trumpet to be the instrument that he plays. Later on, it has kind of a payoff that's sort of like a biblical reference, but I think it's kind of smart because the instruments where there's a human voice coming through it, or you're blowing air through it as a person. I don't know. I have a friend who's a jazz guitar player, and he talks about how it's so hard for a jazz guitar player to become successful and really well known, and a lot of people talk about the reason is because it's harder to express humanity through a guitar because breath doesn't come through it. So I mean, there's a lot of it's obvious that they wouldn't have him be like, I'm a jazz bass player, and he's but something about him,
I can just imagine Charles Mingus in this episode. It'd be much angrier.
Yes, exactly. He's just yelling the whole time. But a deep cut Mingus rap there. But I don't know, just something about him being a trumpet player is just, I think, really perfect on a lot of levels.
Yeah, it seems like trumpet is probably the go-to instrument if you want a
it's
jazz
obvious,
person.
yeah,
I mean,
or saxophone,
sax maybe, but I feel like sax wasn't as popular then as maybe it became later. I feel like jazz trumpet was kind of like the go-to, like
Louis Armstrong. And
your other options are really like bass, piano, or drum.
And he's just like got like this portable drum kit, like a one-man band thing.
Yeah, he's
very
playing
sadly,
this really
just
mournful, like 5/4. A scene of like a guy picking at a jazz guitar, like, you know, in the scaffolding very mournfully, just doesn't read right at all.
Totally. Next up, he's in a music shop to sell his horn.
Another classic Twilight Zone pawn shop.
Yes, exactly. Is your finger on the trigger for this one, John?
Oh, God, yes. I wrote it down. I made a note.
Good.
Calculation.
All right, Fred, 850. What do we got?
It's really odd that like a jingle can become like smug. Like, it's very strange.
We've gotten some feedback as this has developed. People are enjoying this, and I said I think we're pioneers in the realm of passive-aggressive jingles.
I took a lot of care and pleasure in making that jingle, and I feel like every time you play it, it's not so much playing as it is throwing it in my face.
Now, I mean, I know you made it like 2 years ago. How much time would that be in today's...
The pawn shopman offers him $8.50, which is $69.61 in today's money, which is really nothing for a trumpet. I mean, like a really nice trumpet is hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So
yeah, I couldn't help but think compared to Caesar, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Like if you had a choice between a ventriloquist dummy or a trumpet, I mean, I'm assuming he's got a pretty nice trumpet. Yes. I don't know, but
you really got to see John Coltrane's solo for ventriloquist dummy.
I got a very interesting image in my head right now.
Exactly. Like that classic shot of like all this smoke coming up and he's sort of like contemplating thoughtfully, but like Caesar sitting on his lap instead of his saxophone. That'd be fun. Jack Klugman is just low enough to take $8.50 for his horn. And he heads right up to the bar, sidles up next to Robbie, and buys himself a drink. When Klugman gets out of the bar, he goes right back to the musical instrument shop. And he sees the pawnbroker putting the trumpet out on display for $25.
Right.
No jingle?
Oh. Inevitable.
Misfire there. How was that? Not sure if that'll be funny.
With my pants down.
I'm not sure if that'll be funny to the listeners, but I enjoyed it.
Oh, you feel like you just got a little something back.
Yeah, exactly. Chalk one for Freddie, or $204 in today's money, which is still kind of low for a trumpet, but is like, you know, in the realm of being reasonable.
You know, when Klugman's looking through the glass, I feel like the director was really making every effort to accentuate his like odd and ugly face. Like they just
kind of pressed up.
Yeah.
It's. I do like the acting here, though, because Klugman is like, he's drunk, or the character is drunk anyway. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Jack Klugman did it method that day. But,
Jack Klugman is what they called him back then.
That was good. He's playing drunk very well. He's kind of like wagging his finger at the pawnbroker, being like, 25, really? And the pawnbroker, you know, reacts to that, and he's like, hey, I got to make a living. Hey, you got no responsibility. You got, you don't have anything to do. And Klugman is inclined to agree with them because the next beat is him just kind of staggering away from the window and stepping in front of a speeding truck.
And I thought this was a decent car hit effect.
Yeah,
you know?
Me too.
We've seen some poor quality ones. This one, I'll give it up to good old Midnight Medford. He knows how to do it.
Midnight Medford directed this one?
Hell yeah.
Nice. Hell yeah.
You see the quality? That's Medford.
Hell yeah. My bust. Didn't know.
Hell yeah. This whole thing was shot in the middle of a July summer day.
Yeah.
You made that thing look like night. That's Midnight Medford, son.
Yeah. In case you don't know what we're talking about, Don Medford, the director of this episode, was famous for being good at shooting day for night, you know, shooting during the daytime and making it look like night. So he got the nickname Midnight Medford.
Which is, we've said before, the coolest nickname for kind of like the not coolest origin story.
Exactly. I would like it if, like, just to challenge himself, Midnight Medford would, like, shoot night for day. You know what I mean? Like, the daytime shots are, like, 2 a.m. in the middle of the woods, and he somehow made it work. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was really well directed. It's kind of visceral. There's a lot of, like, zooming in on people's faces. It's, like, cut in a cool way. What did you think about, like, you know, to depict a character committing suicide, it can be tricky because it can seem melodramatic.
Right.
It can seem, overwrought. It can almost seem comical if you do it badly, if it just seems like just wee, But I felt like it was something about it was kind of cool. Like, he's drunk, so he's in a weird state of mind, and he just realizes, like, he's got nothing to live for. And it's not like he's planning it out. It's just in this moment, a truck comes by, and he's like, hey, you know what I mean? I thought there's a nice, like, impromptu feeling to it, which sort of felt like more believable to me than a very, like, overwrought monologue and then him throwing himself over a balcony.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that it happens so quickly, it's not like George Bailey sitting at the top of the bridge and kind of thinking about it for a long time. Like, he just kind of sees the truck and goes for it. So I do think it plays correctly. Like, it's not overwrought. It's just kind of...
It's visceral, it just kind of goes for the quick punch.
It takes you, and it takes you by surprise because it happens so quickly. You kind of think, like, wait, was that an act? Wait, oh, wow.
Yeah, totally. For it. Klugman wakes up, and it's night. Or is it? We don't know. With Midnight Medford, you're always on your toes. He and old Rex go to look for the raccoon that gave him the slip. Sorry, deep cut. Another Midnight Medford episode, though. Anyway, he gets up and starts brushing himself off. Everybody's ignoring him. I mean, of course, we as the audience, suspect that there's something going on, but Klugman hasn't quite caught on. Like, the way that they always film this is that people very conspicuously don't notice the person who's talking to them, and I feel like there's, like, varying degrees of success with that. Oftentimes it's like a real intense concentration on not the person, you know what I mean? Which is not really the way that people go about their life, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because you just never see a person not reacting to a person they don't see. But I get what you're trying to express, and
it's kind of my version of your, nitpicking when people are supposed to be frozen, wiggle a little bit.
Right.
Mine is like, nitpicking actors' performances of not noticing ghosts.
Well, the first cop is pretty intensely not looking at him. The other people are doing a little bit better job of being casual. But
he goes over to like a movie theater and tries to buy a ticket or tries to banter with the ticket taker, and she doesn't notice him, and that's kind of really when he starts to realize, oh, wait a minute. And then that gets ramped up even farther when he wanders over to this mirror in the sort of movie theater area, and he can't see himself, so he's a vampire.
I had the note he was hit by a vampire truck.
Exactly.
That's cool.
It's kind of awkward because this might be like # watching it on a computer, but like he's like, I can't see my reflection, and then he wanders over and you can see his reflection. You know what I mean? Because the way they did the special effect was with glass, and so you can see the reflection with glass. Did you notice that? Or
a pedant would notice that, Fred.
I feel very awkward. I thought you'd be all over this stuff.
When you see it, you're automatically processing like how'd they do that effect. So I was pretty confident how it was done in the first place, but I still thought like, good job. Yeah. It's well done, even though it's obvious. And then when you see the reflection in the glass, I still like Raiders of the Lost Ark. True. I can see the reflection when he's got the snake there, but it's still a cool scene.
Yeah, no, totally. I do like that when Klugman sort of comes to the realization that he's dead, he kind of seems like excited about it. Like he's like, I'm a ghost, booga booga. Like, he kind of gets into it. And then he ends up at a bar, surprise, surprise. And even as a ghost, he's a drunk. And
I did like that detail of him sneaking the drink as a ghost. I mean, that was just good character. It was amusing.
I've slipped this mortal coil, but
what the hell?
I still like my bourbon. I felt like the bartender was maybe the biggest offender in the actively not noticing. He looks like he's like having a staring contest with someone off camera as Jack Klugman sneaks a little drink. But in the middle of this bar scene, Jack Klugman wanders over to a jukebox. And he sort of goes down memory lane, reminiscing about a record that he played on a long time ago.
I don't know that
all
one.
Right. Well, so I can usually guess when you got the clip, but when I set it up and there's nothing there, it's a real whiff. Anyway, he's reminiscing about how he played on a record with Tommy Dorsey. So obviously, that's a nice little character moment of realizing that he really had a heyday because, of course, everyone listening knows exactly who Tommy Dorsey is. He was a famous jazz musician.
Dorothy Gish came up to me and she said, "Young man, you have got it. And
Anyway,
sorry.
Anyway, so it's just like a nice sort of sad little reminiscence of like, you know, the time in which he used to be a popular musician, which definitely hit pretty close for old Freddie. Definitely a few tears flowing in that monologue. But Joey goes back to the sort of the back alley of the jazz club, and he hears someone playing a horn, and he wanders over to check it out.
I've got a clip of this. Hang on 1 second.
It's not bad, actually. Did you practice that, or?
I don't know. I've never tried to do a trumpet, but sounds all right, I guess.
And
I still got my chops.
Have you tried any other instruments, or?
No, we don't. This could go down a weird rabbit hole pretty quick.
All right, let's pull out. Joey wanders over to find the source of that beautiful horn playing, and it's Abraham
none
Lincoln.
Other than Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah,
jazz man.
Pretty much. It really does look like a young, sexy Abraham Lincoln.
You know, not only is it Abraham Lincoln, which is wonderful, but even better, you know, for the big Twilight Zone fan, it's none other than John Anderson.
Yep.
Were you excited?
I was jazzed. No pun intended.
I was super excited because he's playing like a jazz man, so he's trying to be cool and loose and jazzy, but he's John Anderson.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. He's still so wooden.
A little background on our man John Anderson. He's the lead in The Old Man in the Cave, and he was also in the Odyssey of Flight 33. Maybe even
of late, I think, like
right.
Clitterville.
And he's just the flattest man. he's human stone. And,
wood is really not appropriate.
Yes.
He's
There's nothing
one
organic
of your denser
in
materials.
in his performances. And they wisely decided to cast him as a beatnik angel. All right, let's hear it.
Oh boy. So it should be said that he's the first person who can recognize Klugman. So
you're a ghost too, huh?
Not really.
I am. I stepped in front of a rather large vehicle this morning. It ain't good for the health, believe me.
You want to blow this a while, Joey?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to. You mind?
Whatever you like.
all right, now the teenage, the preteen in me
yes,
definitely thought
sure.
about that for the intro, but I was better than that. But I'm still,
Especially the audio only. Want to blow this a while? Sure.
But I'm still just giggling over John Anderson trying to be smooth.
Play those crazy jazz blues, Joey.
I love the giggle. He's like, ha, yeah.
Ha. The script said ha. Tripping the light fantastic, are we, Joey? His scat is wonderful. Skiddly bop.
Scooty dip bop.
All right, moving right along.
Reminds me of when I was tripping with Birdman back in '38, Joey. All right.
Sorry. I'm sure there'll be plenty more John Anderson impersonations to come.
Right now you're in a kind of a limbo, Joey. You're neither here nor there. You're in the middle, between the two. The real and the shadow.
You're in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Not many people know this, but John Anderson originally was the host for the show.
Yeah.
Scrubbed him out. But he
Submitted
goes on to
for your approval.
Okay, so here's him actually explaining what the heck's going on right now.
What about the people in the bar? The girl in the ticket booth and the people in the streets?
They are dead. They're the ghosts, Joey. They just don't know it, that's all. Sometimes to make it easier, we have to work it that way. We let them go on in a life that they're familiar with. They never know for a long while. But that's why they couldn't hear you. You're the one that's alive.
Yeah, was that bizarre tangent really necessary for this episode? It's like, wait, so when you die, you go back to your normal life to provide background for other people's limbo experience?
You know, Fred, the reality is we say we wonder what's in the afterlife, but no one really wants to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah. It's true.
I guess he felt a need to explain what was going on with him not recognizing him, and he wanted to do something a little fresher. And it's like, I don't know, the more you think about this new fresh take, it's like,
it just really sends you down a new avenue. completely
it's
full
like-
of questions. Yeah.
Yeah, and trying to like answer a question of the mystery of why people didn't recognize him, the answer raises way more
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
So,
just be like, you're in limbo, Joey. Fine. Good.
yeah,
Got it.
Limbo's
Move
good.
on.
Yeah, they're all images on the walls of the cave.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
you
got
know?
it. Move along. And indeed, they do move along because Abraham Lincoln reveals that apparently another weird element of this theology is you don't really have to do anything. You could just go back to being alive.
Yeah.
You kind of get a do-over on suicide,
Right.
apparently.
So, well, Klugman realizes it's a good life after all
Right.
here.
Yes, indeed.
You know something? I always felt I was getting dealt from the bottom. Well, maybe I just forgot how much there was for me. And maybe I forgot about the music that I could make on this horn and how nice it sounded. And going into Charlie's and talking to people and maybe going to a movie now and then, huh? You know, I never won a beauty contest, but, you know, I had friends. I mean, I had good friends. Good ones. Yeah, somewhere along the line, I just forgot all the good things. That's what happened, you know. I just forgot.
So that's your motivation.
Right.
I love how he's
Well-
like, I have so much to live for. Going to a bar and seeing a movie.
Every now and again.
Yes.
Let's not get excessive.
Klugman decides just to take the mulligan on his own death. On his way out, the mysterious trumpeter reveals that his name is. Do we have this clip or
No, what's his name?
Bootsy Collins? No.
It would be so great if he had just been like, name's Abraham Lincoln. You hear like ba da 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 da. Wait, why would you? That's England. What's the
what
like
the hell is
president's
that?
theme?
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, President of England. Abraham Lincoln, jazz angel and part-time president of England.
I'm sad I can't just hit the clip right now. It's not going to get better.
Yeah,
All right.
true. All right. Anyway, he says his name is Gabriel, which of course brings to mind the angel Gabriel who played a golden horn, and it all ties together. And Joey wakes up, and he's only been grazed by the truck, and coincidentally, the truck driver doesn't want to have to file any insurance forms, so he pays Joey off to not report the accident. And Joey decides to devote himself to small-time insurance scams for the rest of his life. They really pay off. No, he takes the money and buys his horn later that night. Or, again, we don't know. Maybe it's day.
I mean, we don't know if any of the people he's interacting with are dead or
Yeah,
alive.
true,
We really
exactly.
don't.
We are.
It's hard to know what to trust. He hasn't spun his totem, so
Yeah, we are through the looking glass here. He's up on the roof of his building practicing his horn, and for some reason, a beautiful woman just randomly wanders onto the roof, probably to tell him to stop playing.
I think a lot of musicians have that
Yes,
vision.
yes, yeah.
I've played that guitar in the old stairwell a number of times. You never know who might come crawling up.
Yes. I actually think one of my first memories of you is you playing guitar in the hallway at NYU dorm, I want to say.
I know. I was hoping it would have been someone other than you, Fred.
True, I'm sorry.
I was hoping.
I'm like, is that a Sloan B-side echoing through these hallowed halls?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, anyway.
So it's a hot lady who
Yeah.
suddenly wants to date Jack Klugman.
Yes.
And everything's wrapped up in quite a neat little bow for the guy who tried to kill himself 10
Yeah.
minutes ago. And
Let's move along and get to Serling's outro.
Joey Crown, who makes music, and who discovered something about life, that it can be rich and rewarding and full of beauty, just like the
Full
music
of
he plays.
movies.
If a person would only pause to look and to listen. Joey Crown, who got his clue in the Twilight Zone.
What was Joey Crown's like come to Jesus moment come
that's-
to Lincoln's moment supposed to be? Like, was it? I mean, he was in the bar and he was listening to a song, but it was mostly like a sad memory because it was like, I used to be something and now I'm not. Like,
yeah, that was one of the sticking points in the
Yeah.
episode for me is, I mean, other than the whole, like, boy, I wish I weren't dead thing, there
Yeah.
wasn't a real clear, like, oh, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. I mean, granted, like, It's a Wonderful Life spends an hour or so, well,
Yeah.
maybe like 30, 40 minutes, like,
Yeah.
building up why he would want to go back. But here, the only thing is he hears a record he's on, but he doesn't really have a clear, like,
yeah.
Gosh, those were great times.
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
Like, and the funny thing is, it's not that hard to do that. Like, they could have just had, like, someone come into the bar and, like, smile and kind of, like, tap their toe to the song that he was on or something like that. And, you know, that would have been enough, I feel like. But they really just kind of just show him wandering around being a ghost, and then they kind of just sort of retcon the It's a Wonderful Life moment. It's really not there. I mean, there are lots to like about this episode, but I feel like that's kind of a big gaping hole in the middle of it.
In theory, maybe like him hearing Abe play the trumpet like kind of inspires something in himself, like, oh, it's about the music and how great it is. But that doesn't really work because we've already had a scene of him playing the trumpet like mournfully and kind of, so he still has the music in him even though he's at that despair level. If they'd set up the character of like he doesn't even play anymore except for like to get money for more booze, and like hearing the music played by the angel stirs something in him and helps him remember, maybe, but like that's just not set up right. So
and I also feel like the way they set up his sadness is weird too, because I think I brought this up earlier, but it's like it wasn't clear to me, was it like he used to be sober and used to be a great musician and then he got slowly addicted to the sauce and that kind of ruined him? But they didn't exactly establish the timeline very well. I feel like it was kind of like I was great and then I became a drunk because I was so bad, but I thought booze was the thing that ruined me. I don't know, it was just a little murky in a way that it didn't need to be.
I don't think there's like a real solid connection here, but just since we did it like 2 or 3 episodes ago, it's kind of like an anti-Horace Ford, because like Horace had all these like grand visions of his past, and he goes to his past and he like suddenly is gobsmacked by this whole, all the kids hated him and beat him up, and it's like, wait, how did he remember it so incorrectly? And here it's like Klugman is like, oh, I'm so miserable and life's terrible, and the second he dies he's like, life was pretty good. I'd taken a movie every now and again.
Exactly.
Things were great.
I never saw the latest Transformers movie. Right. I mean, it's another one of those episodes, kind of like 16mm Shrine, where it's like a character has a problem, they ask to go back, they go back. You know, it's just a little, it's too easy. I don't get why they didn't put some kind of obstacle, you know?
It all just feels very thin. I think it covers it up with good moody directing and music, but it's very, very thin.
It does have great mood. That's the thing. I think the writing is good. I mean, not the plot, but like the dialogue, the lines are good, and Jack Klugman does a really good. It's a very like soulful performance, you know. And so I feel like he gives it a depth that's not really there in a weird way, you know? Like it's like at the end of the episode, I was like, oh, that's like really touching, and then I was thinking about it, I was like, wait, what the hell was that? Like, you know, when you're in it watching Jack Klugman go through it, it seems meaningful, but like after the fact, it doesn't really stick with you as a meaningful story.
And I think the ending is just so neat, it kind of makes me like it less, you know, just like the woman might like, it's like the Marty thing, he's like, I'm a big ugly dog and blah blah blah, and then at the end, like, it's not even a Marty level girl, like a cute gal comes up to him on the roof of a tenement and is like, I'm new, I need a date.
By the way, I moved to New York to start a record label that specializes in drunk jazzmen.
Totally. There's good stuff, but I feel like the undercarriage is just so weak.
The Day for Night was good, though. Let's not to take anything away from that.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Scott, Zickery, Mark Grams Jr., Zickery and Grams, and IMDb.
Okay, the Buck Houghton & Co. truck is a tribute to producer Buck Houghton. When Joey is playing... Oh, this is... let me get on my IMDb goof voice. When Joey is playing, it's obvious that the fingerings don't match the tune, revealing that he isn't playing at all. At one point, he even held a valve only halfway down, which would have resulted in a very flat, bad note. And as Fred said, when Joey realizes he is dead because he has no reflection in the theater mirrors, but when he is in the bar and leans on the jukebox, there are reflections on his face and hand. Ugh.
Your Fred rivals my Crypt Keeper.
You don't even need a soundboard for that. That's great.
Anything else from Zickery? Or
Zickery just kind of praises the direction, which
Yeah.
I will agree. He does kind of draw an underline around we didn't mention, but when Honest Gabe is walking off into the sunset, there's kind of a moment where he's
Honest
walking
Gabe.
under.
Took me a second. That was good. That was good.
When he's saying his name, he kind of lands right under an overhead light bulb that's like hitting his head. So he says, "I'm Gabriel," and there's kind of like a halo of light over his head. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He just kind of points out some of the touches. One of the, I think Buck maybe talks about how much prep Klugman put into the role, which I think for like television was a little unusual. Apparently he did work and try and get the fingerings right for Trumpet so it'd look a little bit more
There's a
plausible.
little bit of debate about that in Mr. Martin Graham's book.
Oh,
Shall we
well,
move
take
on
it
to
away,
that?
Fred.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, apparently, Klugman remembers putting in a lot of effort to kind of fake the trumpeting, but John Anderson recalled to author Mark Phillips that Klugman...
Please, in Anderson voice.
Well, it's a long quote. It's going to take me a while to get through it. Later, Jack and I, who are old friends, started rehearsing the scene, and I said, "Jack, this is quite boring. Jack, how did
still
you
fun.
do the trumpet practice?" He said, "What practice?" I said, "Are you telling me that you didn't even practice?" Okay, anyway, basically John Anderson says that Klugman says that he didn't practice. So there's a lot of he said, Anderson said about the whole issue. And you watch the episode and you be the judge. I think he did actually a pretty good job, to be honest. According to Martin Graham's, apparently this idea of Serling wrote it, went through a lot of different drafts. It was originally a radio show. And then it was he sold a script to a craft television theater called The Blues for Joey Minotti, which was very similar. And in that, he was a piano player. So I think he kind of, it's interesting, but you think trumpet player is so obvious.
He's walking on down the alley, toting his baby grand.
Exactly, rolling it
Brings
down.
it into the pawn shop.
And apparently he submitted it to something called Studio One. It got rejected, and then he kind of like went around his agent to submit it to somebody else. And he got a light slap on the wrist from his agent when it was rejected. Blanche Gaines said in a letter to Rod, "I'm not going to harp on the 'I told you so' theme, but I do wish, Rod, that you would not leave bad examples of your work with editors. If you could only learn to evaluate your work more and throw a few things in the wastebasket, I'm sure it would help your career in the long run." So it's just interesting that, like, I don't know. I feel like Rod certainly, like, took it upon himself to, like, write a lot. I mean, it wasn't just the Twilight Zone. He was writing
Right.
other shows at the time. It's interesting to hear, like, people kind of at the time chiding him for that.
He was a volume guy. I mean, he
Yeah.
wrote so much, and a lot of it was quality. But I think any writer, when you're writing so much, not all of it's good. But he was in a position where he was able to like publish or produce, virtually everything he was writing. So, getting this
Rings close to home with our podcast, but yeah.
yeah, totally. Well, it's kind of like a lot of podcasts. There's not the quality control, but I don't know.
We won't name names, but yeah.
Right.
Martin Grams goes into detail about how they did the trick shot where Klugman looks through the glass and doesn't see his own reflection. Apparently, it's pretty complicated. It was like a duplicate set, and
Sure.
the woman playing the ticket booth was a twin, and her twin was in the other thing. So I thought it was kind of cool. Went to a lot of trouble to get that effect. Only to ruin it with the reflection in the glass. But anyway,
Right.
The woman on the rooftop is named Nan, who's a nickname for one of Serling's daughters, Anne. And also, apparently, Officer Flaherty is mentioned by Joey in the beginning of the second act. And if you'll recall from A Night of the Meek, there's an Officer Flaherty character. So apparently, Serling maybe, got thrown in the drunk take by an Officer Flaherty.
I was definitely getting a Corwin vibe off Klugman.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah,
had
for
a
sure.
similar "Why I Drink" monologue. So.
Yeah. So apparently there's a framed photo of, as Graham calls him, Cassius Clay. Of course, it's Muhammad Ali, hanging on the wall in the...
Well, if Mama named him Clay, I'm going to call him Clay.
Yeah, true. There you go. Hanging on the wall in the bar, and the same photo apparently appears in almost every bar scene in the Twilight Zone, including A Kind of Stopwatch and What You Need.
Jack Klugman played Joey Crown. He has been in quite a few Twilight Zone episodes. He was also in Death Ship, In Praise of Pip, and A Game of Pool.
Yep.
Frank Wolf played Baron, his friend at the beginning. He worked predominantly in Italy, and kind of weird, unsavory connection. He actually died by suicide. So Yeah, I think about 10 years. Maybe, I forget exactly when. John Anderson played Gabe, as we've mentioned. He also had a run in the Twilight Zone, Old Man in the Cave of late, I think, at Cliffordville, not Odyssey of Flight 33. And I'm just wondering if the Anderson estate will be sending us letters soon.
It's just so funny that his name is Gabe and he looks like Gabe, short for Gabraham.
Mary Webster played Nan. She also played Ruth in Death Ship.
Huh.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Ned Glass played Nate, the pawn shop owner. He was also in The Midnight Sun. James Flavin played the truck driver. He was also in Once Upon a Time, written by Serling, directed by Midnight Medford. That brings us to the...
Inevitable.
MST3K.
So we like to find connections between Mystery Science Theater 3000, our favorite show, and the Twilight Zone, our other favorite show. I noticed on Twitter someone was saying that I sound a little bit like Mike Nelson, which I think is just BS flattery, frankly. I mean, I'm happy to be... I love Mike, obviously, but...
Wasn't my first thought, but...
It's going back to the first time I met you at NYU, after you put down that guitar, I
Right.
remember just meeting you and thinking, like, even before we started talking about Mystery Science Theater 3000, I feel like you worked a couple MST3K jokes
You had
into
the
your
look
banter.
of an MST.
No, but I was like, yeah, this guy watches Mystery Science Theater. This guy's been to a few conventions. So I
Convention cons, Fred, please.
yes, sorry. And I kind of felt like you're the more, Mike and Joel influenced guy.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what do we got this week?
Pretty sure I have not gone to this well before. This episode was edited by a man named Joseph Gluck.
Okay.
He edited a film or a serial called The Phantom Creeps that starred Bela Lugosi, and that serial was featured in 3 second season episodes: Jungle Goddess, Rocket Attack USA, and Ring of Terror.
Right.
So,
Cool.
deep cut.
Deep
there
cut,
you go.
What a good one. What does IMDb say ratings-wise for this episode?
IMDb gives this episode a 7.5.
When you read about this episode, I get the feeling that people really love it, so I'm kind of surprised to see that it's in the middle there. I mean, I think people like it because it's got a good mood and because it's got Jack Klugman, and I think the suicide is kind of visceral and sad, and and it's got an interesting, distinct feel to it and an interesting, distinct milieu. But I also think a lot of the reasons we talked about, the thinness of it, hold it back from greatness.
We have been talking it up. When I watched it, I was left more cold. I think that Klugman did some very good episodes, I think he does very good work here, but I don't think this is a very good episode of the show. If you put a different actor and a different director, same script, I think this is like a 5 all the way. I think they elevate it a bit.
Yeah, you put Harold Ford in this one.
I'm just saying, like, what's the word? Like, put a DYAR, like, or
What
like
is that? What's that?
It's like the advanced metrics. Like, if you just put a replacement level actor, not a bad one, but
what's
replacement level
DYAR mean?
defensive yards above receptions. I forget. There's like
Okay.
just let's skip that and just say replacement level. That's
Got it.
the
Okay.
like basic metrics.
Got
If
it.
you just put like an average actor in here, an
Yeah.
average director, I think this is like forgettable
Yeah.
completely. I think the director and the actor rise it up a
You
bit.
put a
but
little Debbie snack cake in here. Sorry, go on.
I think it's like maybe 6- for me. I don't think it's not one that I jump back to. When I think of like the Klugman episodes, we haven't talked about it yet. I remember Praise of Pip very fondly. I like Game of Pool a good deal.
Yeah.
This one is kind of like, it's kind of riding on the coattails of better
Yeah.
Twilight Zone episodes and better Klugman
The
episodes.
thing is, I fundamentally agree with every logical critique of the episode. I just feel like, as a musician who frequently questions his own self-worth,
Who's jumped in front of a few buses in your day?
I mean, for every inflation calculation jingle you've thrown in my face, that's only the tip of the iceberg. I know it's cheesy and it's kind of obvious, but it is true that I just feel like I just reacted a little bit more emotionally to it. And I think, especially because Klugman's a great actor. So, it's not a great episode. It's not like among my top 10, but I felt a little more warmly towards it. So I'm going to give it a 7+.
Cool.
That wraps it up for A Passage for Trumpet.
This was a request by Timothy on email and Nathan on Twitter.
Thank you much. Next week, we're going to do another request, but you're going to have to check out our social media platforms to find out what it is. We've got a lot of them. John, what are they?
Twilight Pwn, pwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter @Twilight Pwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You can listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app, or you could subscribe to us on iTunes if you're over there. If you'd leave us a rating or review, we would really appreciate them. To that end, let me give a little shout out to Sim Samara and Podcast Obsessed. Really appreciate. Both wrote some very nice things about us.
Thanks so much. So, for the outro, do you like jazz music?
Actually, I do quite a bit.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Yeah, well, I mean, you know.
I'm a Howard Moon jazz man.
Well, when you're not riding in your red
See a
pickup
bullet
truck on the
down
way to see a Steelers game.
In general, when I work, I can't listen to music with lyrics.
Yeah.
It distracts me, and so I listen to a lot of classical, but either classical or jazz work for me pretty well. So I tend to prefer like bebop era, and I kind of like when it's more spare, like give me a piano, a drum, and a horn and a bass. That's about all I want. How about you?
I too like jazz, although I kind of have like more of a mixed relationship with it. I feel like I like the classic jazz albums, but I feel like it's one of those genres where if you are anything less than amazing, it just kind of blends together a little bit.
Sure.
Anyway,
Sure.
And that's the hilarious final line of this episode of the Twilight Pwn. Thanks much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week, John.
All right, later, Fred.
Late.
What about jazz?
Jazz?
Jazz.
What?
Yeah? Are you aware of the music known as
84,
jazz?
85?
No, we're
Matt
talking...
Bianco.
That's not jazz.
Curiosity killed the cat.
That's not jazz. That's not
The
even
cat's on the
jazz.
street.
Shut up, okay? That's not
I
jazz.
see
Stop
sorrow
it.
in your
Don't,
eyes.
please. Don't. Okay, that's not jazz.
I don't like jazz.
You fear jazz.
Oh, really?
You fear the lack of rules, the lack of boundaries. It's all just chaos, shapes, primal. Oh, I'm lost. It's a fence. No, it's soft. Ooh!
You're creepy. Jazz is for losers.